should just scroll all the way down.
Well, eventually maybe.
Just down. Right.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, it's now done. Well, maybe it's not. Yeah, I've seen it. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
You good? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're on.
Well, just.
yes, I'll
Yeah, so just grow along and then just do a huge like buzz. And buzz up and it's so sort of like. You should do like. Probably not.
Don't block the sun.
I'm not blocking.
You can move the.
I don't know how to do that.
Send her to- send her to-
Yeah, we can have. row in
So
front.
there's some more. You can move up here too.
Becca's short, so she can go. I'm
You
short.
can get some on this side too. You know, so move these up. Yeah, there you go.
Your height, man. You got a reserved spot in the front, in the back too.
Pleasure, Tom.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you all so much for joining us. I am Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and today the Congressional Progressive Caucus stands together, united in our opposition to Kevin McCarthy's Republican shutdown. What we want is simple: no cuts, no layoffs, no shutdown. In just 10 days, the government will shut down. This is a ticking time bomb. They lit the fuse, and now they're surprised that it's going off. And who loses from these absurd, delusional political games? Working and middle class families will suffer. But instead of trying to get to resolution, instead of sticking to the deal that Speaker McCarthy himself made with President Biden around funding levels for the government spending, McCarthy has handed his gavel to Marjorie Taylor Greene and the extremists in his party. He has 10 days to pass a clean continuing resolution to keep the government funded. But guess what he's doing instead? He is wasting time on political stunts, throwing out a baseless, absurd impeachment inquiry of President Biden like a shiny new object that he hopes will save his position as Speaker of the House and will distract you from the fact that Republicans have been unable to pass 11 out of the 12 spending bills, their own spending bills that they drafted with the majority, and they have been unable to pass those. Most recently, a colossal failure on the defense bill that was loaded up with mega right provisions like preventing service members from traveling to get an abortion and many other things. By the way, their spending bills that they do have, that they haven't brought to the floor yet, have make incredibly cruel and extreme cuts. Things like kicking kids out of preschool, pulling teachers out of classrooms, and slashing food for the hungry. And that nationwide abortion ban that 80% of the American people oppose, including 65% of Republicans. This is the Republicans in ruin show: extreme and unworkable. And with every stunt, every bill failure, they are showing us again and again that they're just unable to govern. There is absolutely no path for the Republican funding bills in the Senate, and that's exactly the point. They can't get that extreme agenda passed, so they're shutting down the government. And there's only one way to avert the disaster of a shutdown. McCarthy can uphold his promise and deliver on the deal that he struck with the president in June. That is why today we are sending a letter to Speaker McCarthy, signed by 92 Progressive Caucus members, calling on McCarthy to pass a clean continuing resolution to keep government funding at nothing less than fiscal 23 levels and to pass bipartisan appropriations bills like the Senate has done. No cuts, no layoffs, no shutdown, no shiny objects to distract anyone. Stick to the deal that you negotiated. Technical term, this is like a shutdown shit show. And if you can't do that, then govern or move over, because Republicans have a speaker. The Democrats have a speaker, and that speaker is Hakeem Jeffries, and we're ready to govern. We can get it done. With that, it's my honor to turn this over to our Deputy Chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Representative Omar.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Jayapal. And thank you to our fellow Progressive Caucus members for their steadfast leadership and for championing a government that works for the people of this country. It is shameful that we find ourselves in this situation again. In 2019, I started my tenure in Congress, the largest government shutdown in US history was happening. It started months before because Republicans could not pass a bill to fund the government, even though they controlled the House, the Senate, and the presidency. In fact, every single government shutdown in the past 30 years has taken place when Republicans controlled this chamber and could not even muster the votes to keep the lights on. It happened in 1995 under Newt Gingrich. It happened in 2013 under John Boehner. It happened twice in 2018 under Paul Ryan and Donald Trump. So forgive me if I don't believe Kevin McCarthy when he complains that governing is hard or that this majority is too small to pass legislation. Has he heard of Nancy Pelosi? Have any of you ever heard Speaker Pelosi complaining that we could not govern even though we had a similar size majority? Did you ever see Democrats shut down the entire government over demands that didn't even have a chance of passing muster with our own caucus, much less than the House and the Senate? Absolutely not. But just calling Republicans incompetent would let them off the hook because it is also about cruelty. I serve in Democratic leadership in the House Budget Committee, and we just marked up the latest Republican budget, which keeps in place every single dime of the Trump tax cut for the rich, keeps in place every single dime in funding the Pentagon and military contractors, and makes some of the biggest cuts in history to things like food stamps, Meals on Wheels, Medicaid, housing, veterans health care, and virtually every program under the sun designed to help the working middle class. They know what a Republican shutdown would mean. Hundreds of thousands of workers wouldn't get paid. Small business owners in Minnesota forced to wait for loans and certifications. Our constituents' safety put at risk as FDA food inspections and EPA environmental inspections are suspended. Social Security offices shattered, but they have made clear that they are okay with that. Freedom Caucus leader Chip Roy said shutdown is almost inevitable and warned we have to hold the line. They want the shutdown. Their goal is to build a society that gives even larger handouts to corporations, to defense contractors, and to millions like themselves, while leaving everyone else with crumbs. Or as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, socialism for the rich will get free enterprise capitalism for the poor. We in the Progressive Caucus and Democrats are ready to work with our colleagues in the House, in the Senate, whether they are Democrats or Republicans, to prevent this government shutdown and the pain that it will cause. Because we show up every single day to govern on behalf of the people who sent us here. Thank you. It is my honor to introduce our whip, Greg Kassar.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Chair Omar. I'm Greg Kassar, and I represent Texas's 35th district in the heart of Texas, and I'm whip of the Progressive Caucus. Today, we're releasing a letter to Speaker McCarthy that shows that the Progressive Caucus is absolutely united in opposing a shutdown and opposing continued needless attacks on working families. We're 10 days away from a shutdown, and when folks ask me, how's it going? What's going on with the Republicans? We've seen that the Freedom Caucus, instead of being committed to their constituents, every day they are choosing more and more chaos. Essentially, the Republican caucus has decided that they want to score political points against President Biden and throw working families under the bus. They don't care if they destroy basic government services for people hurt the economy as they deal damage to President Biden. They're committed to shutting the government down. But on the progressive side, we are making it really clear to the American people that we are ready to pass a bipartisan funding agreement to keep the government going. Again, to be really clear, the Freedom Caucus has said that they want to shut the government down. The Progressive Caucus proposal is to say in 10 days, let's just keep basic services in the economy going just like they're going today. That's our radical proposal. How about in 10 days, we just keep things going and work on appropriations? But McCarthy and Marjorie Taylor Greene's shutdown proposal, what they want to do in 10 days is possibly delay payments on Social Security, Medicare, and veterans benefits. Their plan in 10 days is to furlough thousands of federal employees without pay, force service members and law enforcement officers to work without pay, endanger FEMA relief, halt EPA inspections of hazardous sites, eliminate Head Start slots for thousands of kids, cause significant delays at airports, block new loans to small businesses, limit OSHA inspections to protect workplaces from being unsafe. They want to delay infrastructure projects and so much more. So to really bring this home, you could not see more of a difference between what the Progressive Caucus and the Freedom Caucus are proposing. In 10 days, if they want to stick their poison pills into our funding legislation, if they want to have even more cuts to the compromise that they already struck and agreed to, let's be clear, that is deliberately shutting the government down. I know they've had trouble bringing bills to the floor, but I expect that if they do bring something to the floor, it is absolutely hollow if they say that those bills are to keep the government going. They know well and good, just like everybody in the press knows well and good, that those bills are not to keep the government going. They are messaging bills as they try to take us to a shutdown. But the Progressive Caucus stands united today to saying we can fund the government, we can have essential services, we need to fight back against these right-wing attempts to let billionaires and corporations off the hook for paying their taxes, and we can just get to bipartisan appropriations bills without a Republican shutdown. This shutdown will be on McCarthy for caving in to the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene. And with that, I want to pass along the microphone to Chair Emeritus of the Progressive Caucus, Congressman Brett Pope.
Great. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. Kevin and the Chaos Caucus can't. Kevin and the Chaos Caucus can't pass any appropriation bills. Kevin and the Chaos Caucus can't pass a continuing resolution. Kevin and the Chaos Caucus can't keep government open. And apparently Kevin's boss, Marjorie Taylor Greene, can't find on Hunter Biden's laptop a continuing resolution that they can support. That's where we're at today. Look, I've been through a few shutdowns since I've been here. The most recent was 5 years ago, lasted 35 days. It cost the economy more than $5 billion. We had to furlough 380,000 employees during that time. And right now, the House GOP has us spiraling towards that again in 10 days. We already passed a compromise in the debt ceiling bill, something that they broke that compromise 2 weeks later. In the Appropriations Committee, they started marking every bill to 22 levels of funding, almost every bill, and then threw on a bunch of riders, a bunch of policy riders. They cut the agricultural bill, cut rural America funding for farmers by 30%, went to 2007 levels. The Interior bill cuts the EPA by 39%. That's 1991 levels of funding. And they cut the financial services and other government services bill by 58%, going after the IRS to make it easier for billionaires and tax cheats to dodge paying taxes. That's why we're going to shut down. These are ridiculous bills. There are members of their caucus who know they're ridiculous, but there are some who want them to be even more ridiculous than we've already marked them up to. On top of that, they did riders on abortion, pride flags, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and all sorts of other issues. Look, we had an agreement that Kevin McCarthy negotiated when we did the debt ceiling. He should have stick with the negotiation he made. We, as CPC members, are ready, I think, with all Democrats to make sure that we'll pass a clean continuing resolution. They need more time to pass these beautiful bills. We'll give it to them. Marjorie will have a big smile on her face, but we have to do it the right way. And right now, they can't even get there. We're prepared to do the right thing, keep government open, pass a clean continuing resolution. But we need Kevin and the Chaos Caucus to do that as well. And with that, let me pass this on to the Chair of Policy for the CPC, Representative Mark Takano.
Well, thank you, Chair Emeritus Mark Pocan. My name is Mark Takano. I am the Vice Chair for Policy for the Congressional Progressive Caucus. I also serve as the ranking member of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs. And like my Progressive Caucus colleagues, I'm deeply concerned about the time being wasted by House Republicans and their lack of reasonable action to fund the government and act on issues the American people care about. We're 10 days away from a potential government shutdown. Just 10 days. We have a bipartisan roadmap available right in front of us. President Biden and Speaker McCarthy reached an agreement on government funding levels through the Fiscal Responsibility Act, but House Republicans have reneged on this agreement and cannot agree on a path forward. The only appropriations bill they have managed to pass is an unserious, unreasonable military construction VA funding bill. Funding our veterans should be bipartisan, and yet extremist Republicans used the Milcon VA bill as a vehicle to initiate their plan to ban abortion nationally. Ban abortion. No exceptions. I remember they were talking about this in October of last year in the elections. I'm for the exceptions, especially those members that represented close districts. But what do they do in this appropriations bill? The only one that can pass. It is deplorable that the GOP would start rolling back abortion access by blocking VA from implementing its interim final rule on abortion. What was the interim final rule? The secretary promulgated in September of last year. He said VA will offer abortion services to those women veterans whose life is in danger or her health is in danger or who have been raped or a victim of incest. Uh, this is totally consistent with the Hyde Act, the Hyde Amendment. This put women, veterans at risk by making it harder for them to access life-saving procedures. Democrats in good conscience could not vote for the Milcon VA package and endorse the removal of bodily autonomy for those who served our country. And that's the irony. The very people who've worn the uniform to protect all our rights, they unanimously on their side have sought to take away their rights and their freedoms. Not only that, but Republicans went out of the way to further attack and marginalize the LGBTQ service members, humiliate, humiliate, basically saying that the VA would have a license to discriminate VA contractors, restricting access to safe, necessary, and evidence-based care for transgender veterans. Now, House Republicans are attempting unsuccessfully to advance appropriations bills that include massive cuts to programs like SNAP and Medicaid that veterans rely on. And the CR they proposed would do the same. The House Republican appropriations process is an affront to veterans and all Americans. Every day, Speaker McCarthy and his extremist Republican colleagues bring us closer and closer to a government shutdown. Shutting down the government is the worst thing that the House Republicans can do for veterans and for our country. I know the Progressive Caucus will work with our Democratic colleagues to find common ground with Republicans and avert a shutdown. But Republicans cannot continue to govern in this way. Playing political games with veterans and the country must stop. Speaker McCarthy must bring a spending agreement based on fiscal responsibility and fairness and without these extreme riders to the floor so we can avoid a shutdown. Thank you. Oh, and next up is our ranking member on the Joint Committee on the Budget, Representative Byer.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all my friends for their spirited words opposing a government shutdown, which none of us here want to see. I wish I could say the same for many of our Republican colleagues. Some are rooting for it quietly, and some are just openly trying to make it happen. I represent more federal workers than anyone else in the House. I represent everything inside the Beltway. So the Pentagon, the CIA, DARPA, the State Department, Arlington National Cemetery. I promise you, if there's a shutdown, there will be 100,000 of my constituents who won't get paid. This will be an absolute disaster for Virginia, for our businesses, for our families. These guys have families who depend on them, and they depend on us, and they don't deserve this. When Donald Trump and his allies shut down the government in 2018, we had civil servants of the most powerful country in the history of mankind on bread lines in our capital. I worked at the phone bank or the food bank in Arlington one morning from 8 to 12, just handing out food to the people. In those 4 hours, I never saw the end of the line of the people that were coming to get stuff. I just shared personal stories today from some of my constituents describing the impact of that shutdown. People with families depending on them, many living paycheck to paycheck, worrying about how to put food on the table, worrying about how to make the child care payment, worrying about how to make the car payments. And there are disabled veterans who own businesses, many in our district, in all of our districts, who are worried about how to make payroll. I'm telling you, it's not just the National Capital Region. Yeah, we have a lot of federal employees here, but there are a ton of federal employees in Florida, in Illinois, in Texas, in California. The average is 8,000 federal employees in every congressional district in the country. So this median, a third of our nation's 2.2 million civil servants do are veterans. So this is going to affect veterans more than anybody else. You know, and there are many more federal contractors who are never going to get back paid. They didn't get paid in 2018 or 2013, and they're not going to get paid right now. And this is on top of all the other bad effects of a shutdown, which have been detailed today. So inflicting this kind of harm on a country on purpose is just crazy and irresponsible. So I hope you'll remember the real life impacts on regular people as you watch the Republicans try to conjure up a bill to appease the extreme MAGA Republicans. You know, the weird part is every one of their ideas shares two things. Number one, it can't become law. And number two, it will result in a shutdown. And all of us know that this shutdown has to end with a bipartisan passage that respects the Inflation Reduction Act that we all sacrificed for. We didn't like it. Many of us didn't vote for it, but it's the way government works. Both houses passed it. The president signed it. It's the law of the land. There's a very clear way to move forward, and we need to make it happen. So let me please introduce one of our shining star freshman members of the U.S. House, Representative Summer Lee from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Rep. Byer, and to all of my colleagues who stand with us here in the Congressional Progressive Caucus, ready to do the work of the American people. I came, and I know that we all came to Congress here to represent marginalized and vulnerable people, so-called least of these, but mostly the hard-working families in each of our communities and communities like mine. Children whose ability to grow into doctors or teachers or business owners or congresswomen who need and depends on our government not only functioning for them, but fighting for them. They deserve better from their government, not worse. But instead, progressives are here today for the second time since those of us who are freshmen came into office just a few months ago, because Republicans are deliberately forcing a government shutdown because they know that we, the people, won't stand for their government shutdown, won't stand for their cruel pro-hunger, pro-eviction, anti-parent, anti-senior, anti-worker, anti-veteran plot to please their cable news cultural warriors or pay for handouts to their billionaire friends. Republicans know the American people see right through their, their bullshit. So instead, they're trying to divert and distract by spending taxpayer dollars on a fake impeachment, counting on the media to fall for their scheme and give more airtime to their lies than to how their shutdown will impact our lives. So if you're a parent, I want you to know that we are fighting to stop Republicans from forcing a government shutdown that would rip away access to preschool for 100,000 toddlers, tearing away access to life-saving health care for 70,000 children in need of checkups or chemotherapy or trips to the ER, and to keep over 2 million women, babies, and children from receiving formula and the food assistance they need to survive. If you're a senior or somebody who loves their parents or their grandparents, I want you to know that we are fighting to stop Republicans from forcing a shutdown that would rob 60,000 of our grandmas and our grandpops of lifeline access to food delivery and shelter. With housing costs so high that nearly all of us are just a crisis or two away from becoming unhoused, I want you to know that we are fighting to stop Republicans from robbing nearly 300,000 households, 20,000 veterans of vouchers they need to keep a roof over their heads. And if you're someone with an injury, illness, or disability, I want you to know that we're fighting to stop them from forcing you to wait 2 whole months longer to receive the lifeline disability benefits you need to pay for rent or groceries. I don't know any toddlers who would throw the kind of temper tantrum that Kevin and the Chaos Caucus have thrown and continue to throw. And I don't know any regular person outside of Washington, Democrat or Republican, who wants families evicted from their homes, flights canceled by TSA staffing shortages, or seniors unable to get help with Social Security and Medicare. I want to wrap up by saying that Republicans have made their priorities clear: protect the rich and CEOs of the biggest corporations, starve and evict families, cut people off of essential services, and attack trans people and the right to abortion at the expense of their own voters and our entire economy. We have a big fight ahead. But I want folks to know, just like last time, the people powered progressives that are here with us today will hold the line and make daggone sure, because I'm not going to cuss twice, that Republicans honor the deal that they made. No cuts, no layoffs, no shutdown, period.
Thank you so much. We have incredible members of the Progressive Caucus. Thank you all to the speakers. I also want to thank the members that are here with us: Melanie Stansberry, Becca Ballant, uh, Rashida Tlaib. There she is. Rashida Tlaib, Jan Schakowsky, Paul Tonko. I know Jimmy Gomez was here as well. And the 92 members of the Progressive Caucus that have signed this letter. We'll open it up now for questions, and the first question goes to Laura from CBS. To what?
Do you support efforts by centrist members of your party to work with the speaker on a compromise bill?
Well, I really don't know what a compromise bill is, because we have a deal that Kevin McCarthy made with the President of the United States. For many of us, that was a big compromise. There were some of us who did not vote for the Fiscal Responsibility Act, but it is law now. And so that was the deal that Kevin McCarthy should stick to. In terms of a continuing resolution, we are not going to stand for cuts that hurt the American people. The continuing resolution should be a clean continuing resolution at the fiscal 23 levels. That's what our leader, Hakeem Jeffries, has made clear. That's what we all stand for. And I invite any of our members that want to answer questions, just let me know. Anyone else?
Kind of two for one, if in the event of a shutdown, how would you try to maximize political pain for Republicans? And then secondly, if it came to a motion to vacate, how would you and the CDC handle such a motion?
Well, on the shutdown, this is a Republican shutdown. I mean, they have the power right now to pass a clean continuing resolution. We can use a discharge petition. We can just get a handful of Republicans to sign a clean CR right now that would stop the government from shutting down. We are not going to hurt the American people. This is the Republican shutdown. I think in terms of a motion to vacate, this is a question that's been asked a lot. We haven't talked about it as a caucus, so I'm not speaking for the entire caucus. But what I will say is that we actually have some agreement with the other side who wants to vacate the chair, because we think Kevin McCarthy is a very weak speaker. Kevin McCarthy made a commitment, a negotiated commitment to President Biden, and then broke it. Kevin McCarthy started a baseless, absurd impeachment of President Biden. And Kevin McCarthy has handed the gavel to Marjorie Taylor Greene. So I think you'll find agreement that we have a really good speaker that we voted for 15 times. We can vote for him for a 16th time. His name is Hakeem Jeffries. And if you want to look at a model of what democratic governance looks like, you can look at the last term where Democrats were in control of the House. You can also look at the Senate in this term. They have passed in a bipartisan way all of their appropriations funding bills. So I don't think you can expect Democrats to save Kevin McCarthy.
curious to know from members who have been through other shutdowns how this crisis is different. There seems to be sharpened rhetoric. There's some profanity today. I'm curious to know what about this particular crisis is different from previous shutdowns. And here for some Republicans who don't want to fund the government because President Biden has requested additional assistance. I'm curious what the official position of the CPC is as it pertains to Ukraine funding. What's your message to President tomorrow?
Let me invite Mr. Takano to answer the question about shutdowns. And you're right, Michael. I think this is the first time I've swearing. Yeah.
Well, I came in I was sworn in 2013, and you'll recall in 2013 we had a quite lengthy shutdown. Like can't remember how many days, but it was a long shutdown. And they linked it to the debt ceiling at that point. So there were two things. Those two things were linked together. What I recall, it was about then. Their objective was Obamacare. We'll open the government in exchange. I don't know what they're about right now. What is this shutdown about? What is their what is their objective? What is their policy objective? That's not very clear. This is I think chaos is an appropriate word. They are a party without real content. And that's the big difference between now and then, as I see it.
I got sworn in the first day, and the first vote we had to take was to open back government. And folks don't realize, like it took us 3 months to reschedule people's passport appointments, people's immigration appointments. I don't know how you all know, but even for Social Security, there's a verification process. So all those appointments, even certain reduction in some of the non-essential like staff in certain places, including around VA and so forth. I can tell you, I mean, as a new member, I came in just trying to figure out how I can get them back in the queue so that they can get the services that they need. Um, our residents don't deserve this. I can tell you this. Many don't even realize what the shutdown is going to mean because when I came in, I guess some of the budgets were passed, but not all. And so this is a full-blown, all-out shutdown. And I think folks are gonna realize after 1, 2, 3 I know 35 days they were out, just how devastating it is for our residents to have just a non-functional federal government, helping. And again, these are appointments that are incredibly important to families. It's life-changing for families. Some of them waited a year for these appointments or 3 months or 6 months. I'm telling you, as somebody that saw all of this, it just completely throws a curveball for our families.
Just wanted to add to the question about how will we game this politically to our advantage, is that is absolutely the opposite of what we're going to do. What we're going to be, this isn't a game. We're going to be trying to make as many of our staff essential workers, even though they're not getting paid, to take care of our people, to mobilize the nonprofits, to try to deal with as many crises that show up because of the shutdown day in and day out.
Really gives us real pleasure.
Yes, please.
To that point, we have states right now who are dealing with the results of catastrophic climate change emergencies. I represent one of them. I was on the phone the other night with my 2 senators and governor. We desperately need government to stay open right now for Vermont, for Hawaii, for places in Florida and California that were devastated. That's what people are asking about. They're not asking about how we're going to game this for our political advantage.
On the supplemental? Well, I think that, it's not our side that is protesting funding for Ukraine. It is the Republicans, 70, I think, that voted no on Ukraine funding. That was not from Democrats. So I think we have been, as a Democratic caucus, supportive, and as a progressive caucus, supportive of Ukraine funding. I think the real question is, what are the Republicans going to do? Because we will need full support. And so I know that the Senate has supporters of that funding, but again, I think at a minimum, we've been focusing on the clean CR, but yes, our president has put forward a case, and I think Democrats have been supportive of Ukraine funding. Yes.
I know that Congressman Cross had attention this week for comments he made about giving Christmas bonuses in advance in the event of a shutdown. I just want to know, are there any preparations that you all are taking in your offices? Have you been having conversations with your staff, coming up with a contingency plan in event of a shutdown in regards to constituent services that you could share?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to start, and then anybody please join in. Many of our offices have been talking about how to make sure that our staff is going to be able to survive because the lead grant appropriations budget hasn't been passed, which means while our staff will continue to work as essential workers, they won't necessarily get paid. While they can count on being paid later once we reopen, some people don't have the money for that. And so I know many of our offices are looking and have done already. I know my office has put forward proposals so that we can pay early bonuses just to give a little something to our teams to help them get through. So each office is dealing with that separately. I know we've had conversations in my office about I want to be if the government shuts down, I want to be at home with my constituents. That's what I did last time. I was here for the 35-day shutdown, and I was in district every single day with my constituents who were terrified. And I think the things that Rashida, Becca, Don, others have described, that is what we are responsible for as members of Congress. And so to be there to help people, just deal with their fears, but also talk about what's happening, I think is really our role. And particularly, this is a republic. If we have a shutdown, it is a Republican shutdown. And Don Beyer is absolutely right. Nobody takes any joy in this. Somebody said, "Oh, this is you must love seeing the Republicans in chaos." Actually, no, I don't. I don't because we all came here to get things done. And it is incredibly frustrating to know that we could govern with a very small majority. We could govern, and we knew what we were fighting for. But this majority cannot govern, and it's incredibly frustrating for us.
I think to your question, my office has given bonuses to our staff in preparation for shutdown. Um, with same with Sheeta Tlaib, like I came in a shutdown in a time where we couldn't even get our computers turned on, our phones turned on. 90% of the constituent work that we did was being interrupted, and so we want to be able to continue to have our staff be able to do the critical work that they do for our constituents and not worry whether they're going to be able to pay their rent just in case this happens. But it also is a reminder of why we urgently have to avoid this shutdown because so many people that we represent are not that dissimilar from our staff. They live paycheck to paycheck. Many people we know in this country don't have a rainy day fund. Many people cannot pay their rent, the childcare, any of the things if their paycheck, their source of income gets interrupted. And I specifically remember in the 2019 shutdown, my office introduced legislation to help with childcare because a lot of the federal workers were still being asked to show up, even though they were not getting an. So these are the kind of things that we are thinking about, having lived through that and trying to make sure that Republicans and the public understand that a shutdown is a harmful thing to our economy and to the livelihoods of the people that we represent. And this shutdown is going to hurt a lot more because there is no portion of our government that has been funded like it was last time. Everything is going to be shut down.
Go ahead. And then we probably have time for one last question.
Good afternoon, Melanie Stansbury from New Mexico. I just want to add that not only do we not take any joy in a shutdown, the lives of the American people people are not a game. This is not a political game. This is about the livelihoods, the ability of Americans to survive. It's about our schools and hospitals and all of our communities having the resources that they need to support them. I think that what a lot of people don't understand is that we're talking about critical services. For example, I'm a caretaker of a member of my family. Social Security is going to be shut down. Medicaid's going to be compromised in terms of its ability to meet the service demands of our populations that need access to healthcare. Literally, American lives are on the line. This is not a political. Kevin McCarthy and this caucus are playing games with the lives of American people. It brings us no joy. This is not what we want. We need to keep the government open so that we can serve the millions of Americans who depend on these services. And I can tell you in New Mexico, we have 14,000 active duty military who don't know if they're going to get a paycheck. Many of our active duty military themselves are living paycheck to paycheck. Tens of thousands of New Mexicans will not be getting their pay. This is putting a roof over their heads. This is putting groceries on the table. And this is about American lives. So we will not stand under any condition for a shutdown. And we will not stand for a compromise because it's at the expense of our communities.
Okay, I probably have time for one last question. Yes.
What is the latest there? How serious are they about potentially a handful of?
Well, I think that is the best path, the cleanest path. If Speaker McCarthy can't bring a bill to the floor, then let's get just a handful of Republicans. And I think those talks are ongoing because, frankly, many of those Republicans are in districts that are very tough for them, that President Biden won. And I think that they have to show that they can govern. And I just think sometimes we say moderate Republicans, but I will just point out that in almost every instance, those individuals have gone along with the Chaos Caucus. They've gone along with Marjorie Taylor Greene. They've gone along with Kevin McCarthy's caving. And so I hope that's not the case this time. I think that there are really serious concerns that I've heard from some Republicans, and I do believe that a discharge petition for a clean continuing resolution at the 23 levels, and hopefully with the supplemental funding that the president has requested, I think is important, and we stand ready to do that. That is the path forward, and I hope that our Republican colleagues, even if it's just a handful of them, understand that. It would have to move quickly, because of the logistics of how a discharge petition would work. It would need to really happen quickly, within the next 48 hours probably or so. There's some wiggle room there, but it needs to go over to the Senate as well. So, we gotta take all these things into consideration, and the shutdown date is the 30th, so we don't have a lot of time. All right.
To say, I know we have to have a way to communicate about the Republicans willing to work with us. I would question the term Republican because every single one of those Republicans voted for the Milcon VA bill. They passed that bill. And that bill is very extreme on abortion. It was interesting to see them fall on their sword. They did something harmful to themselves to vote for a very extreme Milcon VA, which denies women veterans any access to abortion, including abortions that may save the life of a veteran. So I would question. I think I would ask the press to think about some other word to call these veterans that are willing, these members of Congress on the Republican side, willing to work with Democrats. They're not moderate. They're very extreme, and I think we need to. My evidence. I presented the evidence to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much. Thank you to my incredible colleagues here and to the 92 members that have signed this letter. We will stay engaged in this, and we are committed to working for the American people and putting people over politics. Thanks.
That's a technical curse. Yeah, it was a stage curse.